I am so excited to have all of you joining us here today on this show. And I'll tell you what, I love all of my guests. You know I do. Every week I say I've got the best guest ever, but this week I truly have the best guest ever. This man, I would adopt him in a minute as my brother, as my son, as anything he would be willing to be because he is just the heart and soul of what it is to be a marvelous, wonderful human being. And I met him about 10 years ago, and Steve the Hurricane Weiss. And in fact, let's go ahead and bring him on up, Jace. Steve the Hurricane, see the big hurricane behind him. And the man, I'll tell you what, he comes in and he will blow you away. And that's no pun intended. And Steve, I am sick that I have let so many years, it's been a couple of years since we've spoken, go by without me keeping in touch with you because you are one of those rare people that have just gone the whole gamut and you have a heart that is, I tell you, Fort Knox can't begin to compare to the gold in your heart. And I honor you, I love you, and I cherish the fact that I get to know you.
I, I hope I live up to the expectations. Thank you so much for that incredible introduction. And yeah, it has been too long. I mean, a phone. I always say a phone goes both ways, so I'm just as guilty of it. It's just as you know, you get caught up with the day to day, and then let's throw in the fact that because the last time I saw you, everything was kind of status quo. We were rocking and rolling, making things happen as influencers, speakers, authors, presenters at conferences. And then the world shut down. And then it was kind of like 4 years of like, okay, how are we going to make things happen? And now I feel like we're finally past that. And we're kind of back to where it was in 2019. So it's kind of like everything is going back to normal. And so that's where we are today. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've done some marvelous things, but it hasn't always been just a piece of cake. Everything was handed to you on a silver platter. Share with us a little bit about your story and, why it is you do what you do.
So thank you for that. And yes, you're right. Nothing was handed on a silver platter. There's no such thing as an overnight success. The success may happen overnight, but that's not without months and years and sometimes decades of planning and preparation for that quote unquote instant success. But the long story short is I have always been entrepreneurial. I have always been a person of energy, a person of, I love the name of your show here, the Power Surge. There's always been a connection, and I'm gonna say a connection to the source, right? You see right behind me here. This is actually a gift from a mutual friend of ours, Laurel Geis, Dr. Laurel Geis.
Oh, I love Laurel. Yep.
She's fantastic. And so she had given me that because she knows I'm a person of faith and, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. That's Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. And, I'm a child of God. I've always have been. I'm connected to the source. Prayer, meditation, scripture is a part of my every single day life. And there was a time in my life where I wasn't living what I believe, and if you believe in something, if you practice your faith, you should live as you believe and you should live as you practice. And I wasn't. And so I had this moment, I had the wife, I had the kids, I had the business, but everything was falling apart until September 2nd, 2014. And in that moment, that's when I had my come to Jesus moment where I just fell on my knees. I surrendered to the Spirit and said, I know you, but I'm not listening to you. I'm going to listen to you and do it your way. And I need miracles because I don't know what to do. And I received my miracles. And by following my faith and following the divine path, it helped me to patch my marriage and strengthen it to, my wife and I are inseparable. I'm the hurricane. She's the eye of the hurricane right here in the middle. My relationship with my children is second to none. And all of my children are successful in their own light and in their own way. And then it changed how I was as a business owner from someone who was angry and frustrated to someone who was grateful that, hey, I do have a business. It is providing an income. I have staff that are loyal and dedicated. I have clients that trust me with the services. So instead of complaining about what I don't have, let me be grateful for what I do. And then all of a sudden, my cup runneth over and abundance. And this story that I'm sharing with you is all at the forefront of it, because now I'm teaching other people how to have happiness and joy and success in their life in all aspects, not just the business, through self-fulfillment and through faith and guidance. And it's just been a wild ride for the last 10 years since that September 2nd, 2014.
And I knew you back when that first was happening, and that was amazing to stand and watch, because I tell you, the hurricane did not even begin to describe how you were just powering through. And I really love and admire and respect your faith. Thank you, because that's something people don't often remember to share, that we're not doing this all alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's
And
there's
it's interesting.
always someone helping us.
There's a book I wanted to share with you that as
Yeah.
soon as you said that, it jumped into my mind, and that was it's called Never Eat Alone, and it's by Kevin Ferrazzi. Never Eat Alone by Kevin Ferrazzi. I'm halfway through reading that book. Actually, I'm almost completely done with it. And there's one section where he talks about the energy it takes to do what we do as entrepreneurs, as influencers, as speakers, as consultants, as husbands and wives and moms and dads and adult children, all the things that we have to do. And he talks about making sure that we take care of ourselves. And specifically, his recommendation is whatever you do with it, make sure that you dedicate at least 1 hour a week to something spirituality. For him, he says that's church, that's worship, plus prayer and scripture daily. That's his life. And I agree. That's me and my life with it. But for everybody else out there, you gotta have that spirituality, because that gives the clarity, that gives the purpose, that gives the centered focus, everything, and the energy to get through the ups and down roller coaster of life.
Well, and you hear a lot about the importance of meditation, and prayer is a form of meditation. It really is. And you got to remember, when you pray, it's like a phone conversation. I can call you, but unless I'm willing to listen to you speak back, what's the point in me calling you?
100%.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Um, well, you know, everything's going great, but tell us about where you're at now, what it is that you're doing, and how people can get in touch with you. Um, I got a couple of comments. It says, "Oh, I've heard of Never Eat Alone before. I need to read it." Yeah, people need to read that. It's a good one.
It's a great book.
Yeah, and I wrote it down. You saw me writing while you were talking, because I was going, okay, I got to get that one. Tell us about what you're doing and how people can get involved. And I know we were talking for a moment about my mom, and how you know how to do that, and you've got a nonprofit. You've got so many things going on, but let's just tackle one at a time.
So yes, I definitely have too much going on for sure. One of the things I did over the summer when I took my annual retreat in August was eliminate things off my plate because there was too much. But yeah, my main business, Home Care Evolution, Hurricane Marketing Enterprises, it's designed to help home care agency owners scale and help them scale and grow through providing superior outcomes for their patients. Meaning, when you provide a better service for people and people get better care, you're going to be able to leverage that to grow your organization. And so indirectly, since I started the company in 2012, we've helped more than 1 million people get the care that they need. Through improving those outcomes, those 1 million people have helped my clients to generate more than $1 billion in revenue on top of what they were doing without us. And so it's been a wild ride during this time. I have a couple of other businesses that I have. I have an investment business in real estate right now that me and several of my partners, we own 7 properties, and we're continuing to grow that business. I recently, earlier this year, became a minor partner, a 20% partner in a virtual assistant business, which I'm really excited about. We, as of yesterday, have 77 full-time employees working in the Philippines with
Wonderful.
all these businesses, and they're healthcare related, so it's very unique and specific to it.
Right.
But it's exciting because it's just wild to see how much influence and how to be able to really help, and it really helps the entrepreneur. It helps out the economy of another country. It helps out the patient at the end because it keeps the cost of care down by doing a little bit of outsourcing, but you still have the people inside the office as well. Like this balance of overflow of work that doesn't have to boggle down the in-house staff by sending it remotely. It's a beautiful blend. That's the business that I took on earlier this year. And then, yes, the nonprofit, the Institute for Dignity and Grace. And it is off the ground. It's not where I want it to be, but it is definitely starting out with what its mission is, which is advocacy for our seniors. I started this business because every single one of us, we all have parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, or we ourselves are seniors and elderly. And when I think about the nature of the home care business, which I've been a part of now for over 20 years in my life, home care is literally like the worst fear of people, right? Like most people, they hope that when their time comes, they fall asleep and they never wake up again. But as well as I do that doesn't happen. People get cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. Sometimes people are independent and active, and then all of a sudden they slip and fall and they break their hip, and then now they're bedbound and they'll never recover from it. And so, having another person physically care for you, mentally care for you, is a very difficult thing. And the Institute for Dignity and Grace is designed to help with senior advocacy, to remind the healthcare continuum that this is still a person. This is a successful adult. They've lived their life to 80, 90, 100 years. Give that person the dignity and respect that they deserve on one hand, and then also for the adult children and the patients themselves as advocacy for them, to help them to get the care that they need, because navigating the healthcare system is very difficult, even for someone like myself who's in the continuum, and I know every box to check. So that's the mission of Dignity and Grace.
Oh yeah, and we're just starting out, and I just went, "Oh my goodness!" My sister-in-law's been doing a good portion of it up to this point, and I can see how people get overwhelmed and just throw their hands up and say, "You know what? Dignity and grace be gone." I'm lost, and so your foundation is wonderful.
Thank you. I want to get more word out for it because I want to continue to grow it and really be there. Right now, there's resources. If people go to the website, it's dignityandgrace.info. That's the website, dignityandgrace.info. And if people go there, and you can see the resources that are there, that kind of, I have to have the conversation about taking the keys away. How do you have that conversation, and we actually hired, for Dignity and Grace, a former director of nursing that I used to work with for many years before I started Hurricane, when I had my home care business. She had 25 years experience as an assisted living director of nursing, and she's created all these resources on that page to help people with having those difficult conversations and how to navigate different scenarios and different situations. We're coming up on winter. We got to winterize the house, because slipping on the ice is that can lead to an unnecessary pain and suffering. So,
Oh yeah. Well, what can people do to get involved in your charity, and not just to take from it, but to give to it?
right now, donations is the best thing that we can use, because the more resources we have, the more we're able to get the word out there. We actually launched a magazine. I wish I had one of the magazines here that I can show you physically. Is that it? No, it's not one of the magazines. Oh, I do. Yes, it is. So Senior Lives Do Matter. That's the name of the Senior Lives Do
Oh,
Matter.
I love that.
That's our
Yeah.
magazine. Right now, it's an annual magazine, so this is the only one that's there. It's actually a free resource. People can go online and download it when they go to dignityandgrace.info. They can find it right there. But right now we're in the process of setting up our second issue to come out later on this year, and we're in the process of getting this to a point where it'll be a quarterly magazine where there's a print copy. People can buy the print copy for $20. Or they can get the digital copy online for free. And it's really just about getting the word out there. So, take the website, share it, post about it, make a donation, consider buying the magazine. Those are the things that really help us as we're getting the word out there about elder care and, aging in place with dignity and grace.
Yeah. Well, what inspired you to work with the senior care?
Honestly, I fell into it. So I went to school to be a pastor. So that ministry background that, hence you talk about Jesus, my Lord and Savior. I went to school for that when I was a teenager and into my early 20s. I came out, I felt I wasn't ready to do that yet. And then I had always had sales and marketing positions. And so in 2005, when I was unhappy and unfulfilled at the job that I was working, I went on 5 job interviews. I received 4 offers, and I decided to go down the path of the senior care because it was a very small company. And I said, if I play my cards right here, I could see myself owning this business one day. And 4 years later, I became the vice president, part owner, and the rest is history, right? The reason why I was drawn to it, and I feel it was the perfect thing for me, and I'm going to say it was a divine, push, right, is once I started to sit down with the patients and their families and see how difficult this was, that pastoral training really came in. And even though not everybody is religious, being empathetic, understanding people, just being there and holding someone's hand when they're crying,
Yeah.
that's what brought the passion out of me for it. There was a woman very early on in my career in 2005 when I had started, when I met with her, and we had what I called a home care party, where she was in the rehab center getting ready to come home, and her husband was there. But then it was her like 6 children and the 6 children's spouses and all of the 13 grandchildren. And there was 25 people in there to hear about the home care that we're going to get for grandma, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this lady and I'm like, this lady is so loved. This lady is so lucky that she has all of this family and all of these friends that support her, that are here for her. And I remember when I was talking about, because the family said, can you say some things to really encourage mom to work hard in therapy? Because the therapist says that if she works hard, she'll get better, or at least stronger than she is, but she's kind of going through the motions. And so when I brought that up, she got very emotional and she kind of reached out like this, and her son was sitting next to her. But as soon as she reached out to put her hand like this, her son knew that she wanted to hold her husband's hand. And the husband, who was on the other side of the room, got up immediately, ran over to her side of the bed, held her hand. And I'm like, that's what I want when my time comes. That's what I want when I'm getting some kind of a news. I want my wife to be there, or if it happens to be my wife, I want to be the one there. I want that kind of a relationship. And I want people to have this experience when our time comes of need, or our parents' time comes of need, to know that there are good people out there, to know that you can trust folks. You got to stay on it. You got to navigate it. But that's what sparked the passion that I have for elder care, and why I've pretty much dedicated the majority of my adult life towards doing that.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you think you had any experiences as a kid that might have led you to this kind of a golden heart toward the seniors?
Definitely serving at the church. No doubt, I've always, the reason why I wanted to become a minister was because of my experience at church, in the youth group, and getting involved and serving and helping other people. And, I felt that God was pulling me to doing ministry in that capacity. And then once I fell into healthcare, or I would say he pushed me into healthcare, that's when I definitely realized that this was what I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. And when I had the business and I was doing it directly, I could only influence so many people, because these were
Right.
my patients I was taking care of. And during my 7 years as an employee owner of that company, I served about 2,000 patients. But through becoming a consultant, through working with the agency owners, as you heard me say, now I've been able to take my personal experiences with training and then now growing my business. I've been able to influence thousands of owners into providing
Yeah.
care for millions of patients. And that's really where God has been taking me. And it's been a roller coaster, right? But it's been a roller coaster that, because of the ultimate like purpose behind it, you get through those valleys and you really celebrate those peaks.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm just thinking of how to have that conversation with a care provider, saying you need to go and join Steve's stuff, and
The
Grace and Dignity.
conversation, and it's wild. That's a very wild question, right? So the way that I attract people to working with me is through the same old ways that everybody attracts, right? I'm working too hard, I'm not making enough money, and I'm constantly stressed out. So when you work with me, I help you reduce those things by getting this right. And so I attract them by, do you have a problem in these three areas? Which, what entrepreneur doesn't, right? So when they come to me and all of a sudden I get them going here, then all of a sudden they get the work-life balance back. The business is providing the service that they always wanted it to, because I don't think there's anybody I've ever met, maybe one person, I actually advise that person to get out of the business. Every other person I've ever met, they want to help people, but
Right.
they're lacking the know-how. So I show them, and then how to get the processes down, and then manage the finances. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm making more, I'm working less, I'm not as stressed, and I'm helping people. It's a quadruple win straight across the board. That's how I attract people to it. So if you want to attract somebody to it, tell them, are you making enough money? Are you stressed out? Are you burning out the candle on both ends there? You should talk to Steve. He'll help you figure it
Yeah.
out and thrive.
Well, I as an individual who's now going to be doing this, and I'm not an agency. I'm just thinking, I'm going to have to rely on some agencies to do some things. And so, that's the first thing. I've got it written down here. I got to subscribe to the magazine. Um, and, my mom could live another 10 years or not.
Right.
We don't have a clue. And, it's like she's got some very serious conditions, but she's stubborn and healthy as an ox. But those serious conditions are very serious conditions, and so she's not healthy. And so
Right.
it's one of those, you know,
It's very
it,
difficult.
it's hard to say. And you know, as a child, I don't want to take away her role as the parent, but at the same time, I've got to step in and take over that role to make sure she's safe and she doesn't fall, or we don't have an issue that she doesn't drive her car, because if she's having a hard time walking, she's not going to be able to press the brake as quickly as she thinks she will.
Right.
And those are tough conversations, and the fact that you've got this already set up to help people with those tough conversations is miraculous. And I think more and more of us are going to find that we're in that position, not necessarily with our own parents, but maybe our grandparents or an aunt or an uncle, or uh, and some of us maybe ourselves. Hopefully, knock on wood, I've got several more years to go before that's the case. But um, you know, when does it happen? It happens when something happens.
And that's where I spend a majority of my time working with the agency owners and the business owners, and then filtering it through to their staff to help them to understand your side of it, right? The patient and the patient's family side of it, where when people are contacting us, it's crisis. Very, very few people are contacting, getting care set up in place before something happens. People wait until something happens and then they go to get it. But time is of the essence. The major life change is here, and it is a dropping everything, and it's very emotional and stressful. And the tips that I give to the adult children, which I'll share with you, my friend over here, Karen, Dr. Perkins, right?
Yeah.
And to your listeners, is number one, make sure that you take time for yourself. All right. That is very important, because it's very easy to burn out, especially if you're a sandwich, generation where you have your mom is aging and she needs help. You are also helping your own children who may be adults, they themselves, and grandkids. Like, there's a lot on you and you're pulled in both directions. You have to make sure there's time for yourself. I was last week in Houston with some of my top clients, and I always open up these board meetings I do with my top clients with a 90-minute segment on self-care. And I remind them that there's 168 hours in every week, 168 hours. And if you block off 56 hours for sleep, let's say you sleep 1/3 of the week, that's 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That leaves you with 112 hours. And before you do anything else with that 112 hours of awake time, prioritize spending 12 of that 112 hours on yourself, because you got 100 hours left for everything else. And I guarantee, if you make the time for your physical fitness, your baking club, that book that you want to read, prayer, meditation, going for a walk, vacation, massage, whatever, like, I don't care what the 12 hours, it's your time, not on your cell phone, not on a computer, your time, something for yourself. I guarantee the other 100 hours, you're going to be productive, you're going to be focused, you're going to be energized, and you're going to be able to handle everything that's thrown at you, and you'll be able to handle it much better because you're ready for it, as opposed to trying to just go. And then we fall in this trap of spiraling down a depression, anxiety, overwhelmed, defeated, impossible scenario. That's the first thing I tell everybody.
I like that with the 12 hours, and my children can attest to this. I have not done that and not prioritized when they were young. I worked so that they had a place to live and food to eat and clothes to wear. And there were times that I would work 96 to 108 hours a week, which means basically I slept very little and I didn't have any time for myself. And the little bit of time I had for them was rushed so that I could get to work to get the work done so that I can make the paycheck to take care of those things. And in looking back, none of them remembered that they had the nice shoes, but they remember that, you know what, mom was gone. And I think that's something that's really important for all of us to keep in mind as we look back on our lives. None of us say, oh, I wish I'd spent more hours working. I wish I'd have made more money for better shoes or for better meals. We say, I wish I'd have spent more time with loved ones. I wish I'd made more memories so that I had more memories to share. And as I got older, I got better. But I went about 8 years there where I was working 96 to 108 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it was not healthy for anybody, especially not me. And so I like, that advice of taking 12 hours. If I'd have taken 12 hours for myself, I think I would have realized I needed to take another minimum of 24 hours for everybody else. And then another, 20 hours individually for people, and
When
gotten
I
more done in a 40-hour work week than in a 100-hour work week.
and that's exact, it's your efficiency. That's exactly it, because every week you're doing this, and it's not 12 hours like a one time, you know what I mean? It's broken down over 7 days. It's like 90 minutes to just under 2 hours, depending on the day. Some
Yeah.
days 90 minutes, some days 2 hours, but that time for you, right? And what it does is it makes it so that when you are doing the things that you have to do, you have to work, you have to care for mom, you have to care for kids, you got to do all these other responsibilities. You can do it because you have the energy, because you recharged yourself, and not just sleep, but you recharged yourself, fulfilled yourself, so that you can
Hmm.
then take care of someone else. It's that age old saying, I can't care for someone else if I can't care for myself. That's impossible.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's very easy to fall into it's a trap. It's a trap. My mother has been permanently disabled since 2015, so I'm
wow.
not just saying this from oh, this is what you got to do. Like, it's easy for you to say, Steve. No, 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 it's not. Steve's got his mom. My mom is permanently disabled. She's been disabled. I want to say she doesn't have a lot of time left with her kidneys shutting down and all these other things that are happening. That's happening right now. But when I spend the time with mom, and that's my second advice to your audience and for you as well, sister, is, if you have the care in place, right? So my mom has the care in place. I come and see mom. I don't spend time doing for my mother because I have the care in place for her on that. And my mother's a Medicaid recipient, so she doesn't have the resources, the government, but you navigating it, whatever. If you have to pay somebody to help you navigate it, it's worth it if your parent doesn't have the resources. So this isn't for just the independently wealthy. 50%
Right.
of the senior population does not have resources, right? So find somebody who can do it. They cost you a couple $1,000s to get it set up, but then it's set up forever, right? So
Yeah.
my mom has everything that she needs. So now when I come and see her, I get to come and see her and be her son, not be her caregiver. And that's
Yeah.
important. My mom values that time with me, her grandkids, my children, my wife, her daughter-in-law, right? She values that. We are making the memories because one day mom's not going to be there. I called my mom on Sunday. I talked to her for 90 minutes. And we talked about anything and everything and what came to mind. And 5 minutes of it was, how is she physically? How is everything with the caregiver and what's going on? And then the rest of the time was about life and what's going on with me in my life and what's going on with her. And she saw my aunt, and they're like, Thelma and Louise and doing all this other stuff. She picks her up and she gets her in the wheelchair, and we got the wedding coming up, and like that. That's the conversation. That's that quality time, and that's so so
Yeah.
so important.
I like that. Yeah, you don't want it to get to a point where all you're talking about is the medical concerns and how are we going to pay for this and what happens if that happens. And you want to be able to spend time just reminiscing and joking and looking forward to other things. And so, yeah,
100%. When we get caught up in because what that leads to, when we're the one doing it all and we get caught up into that leads to caregiver burnout. And then sometimes it leads to feeling like a burden is on. And then that leads to guilt. Like, first it's like, gosh, I wish I didn't have this. Like, this is a burden, right? But then all of a sudden it's like, I can't believe I just said that. Now I'm ashamed of myself, and those are not good places to be in. So by having that mental clarity, that 12 hours for self, 100 hours for everything else, and I would break it down: 30 hours for family, 30 hours for responsibilities that I have, and then 40 hours for work. That's what I kind of teach people, how to balance their time.
yeah,
But when you break it down and you balance the time like that, it does set it up. And that would lead me to my third tip I would give to you and to everybody when it comes to aging parents and helping them out. And that would be, determine boundaries, right? So to your point, you are the daughter, right? I am the son.
hmm,
There were recommendations. I had a place, Karen, I had a place set up for my mom that was perfect. It was handicap accessible. It had this, it had a swimming pool, it had activities, everything was set up. All she had to do was do it. And we fought and I lost, right? And when I lost, because I'm not moving in there, I'm too young, and blah 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 blah. I'm gonna die there. Like, what do you know? Like, it got ugly, and it put a tarnish on our time together. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, before the pandemic. So it was 5, 6 years ago. But it put a tarnish on our relationship for about 6 months because some hurt things came out until I realized, I'm her son. She's not my daughter, right?
Right.
And I have to have some tough love. And so she's going to end up staying where she is, where she is in the same place that's really not set up for her. But I got it set up as best as possible. And I just said, you know what? If something happens to her, and this is accepting it, which maybe is like a fourth thing, right? Accept what's going to happen. It is inevitable. My mother's going to die. It is inevitable. I'm going to die. Inevitable. You're going to die. You're about, like, we're all going to die. That's inevitable, right?
That's, yeah.
Once you understand that, it's like, all right, I've done everything I can. She is my mother, and I will respect her. And if something happens to her, I have to let her know, listen, because you're choosing it, I can't run and be there either, because I also have a wife, and I also have 3 children, and I have a business, and I travel and everything else. So by you doing this, you understand the consequences. And a couple of times stuff has happened, and what it came down to is it created this mutual respect where she's my mother, and she's going to do what she's going to do. And if it ultimately does her in, that is her life, and I had to accept that. At the flip side, she also came to, Stephen did everything he can for me, and I'm not willing to go beyond it. And that's fine, because this is my decision to ultimately make. And so again, we're getting deep here. I had no idea this is what we were going to talk about, but I'm glad we are, because it's so important. Because, I mean, if there's 330 million people in the United States, I can guarantee like 40, 50 million of them are going through this right now. That's a huge, they themselves directly, and then their adult children, next of kin, family members. So was it 80 million, 100 million people are dealing with this at some level? Yeah, that's
at some level.
This is important.
Yeah. Yeah. What you do is amazingly valuable, and, well, it's just amazing. Not to overuse that word. And it, we need to stop and remember that it's the time and the comfort that matters, not a lot of the other stuff.
Right.
And I share the story. I'm going to share a story. I shared the story. It's a true story. It was during that period of my life when I was working 108 hours a week. And I had a report that was due, that was a vital report. It was, going to either save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars or cost us millions in damage if it didn't get done, type thing. It was an important report that, of course, only I could do. I couldn't assign that to somebody else, Steve. How arrogant is that?
That's
Jeez
a whole other
Louise.
podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. And anyway, it was assigned to me, and I did need to do it. But I got the phone call saying, "Hey, Dad's, it's time. You need to come." Well, to make myself feel better, they had said that about my dad for 30 years, and many times in the previous 6 months. But they said, "Serious, this is it. It's not he's going to get better as soon as you get here." And I said, "Okay, well, let me finish the report, and then I'll come down." Finish the report. And just as I was packing up to get ready to go home, I got the call saying Dad just passed away. I was the only one that wasn't there. I didn't get to say goodbye to my dad because I had to finish some stupid report, which, by the way, I went down to the funeral, everything. It was a Friday that I was doing that. Got back a week later, and I said, "Whatever happened?" And they said, "Oh, some things happened Monday morning. We went a different route and didn't use the report anyway." And,
I'm sorry.
that's when I stopped working 108 hours a week. And it was a real kick in the gut to me. And if I can tell everybody else anything, it's, you know, I understand the need to do your job and to do it well. And I understand the need to feel like you're providing for your family and that you need to be where you can progress within your organization. I get that. But when all is said and done, if I died tomorrow, they're not going to stop the office. They're not going to stop and throw a big old morning more and a parade. They're going to just keep on working like, oh, well, that was inconvenient. So, all right, who's going to cover her stuff while we find somebody to replace her?
Right.
And yet my family, I can't get that memory back. I mean, that's something I'll never be able to replace. And I'll live with that the rest of my life. And that's nobody's fault but my own. And I'm not kicking myself and beating myself up. I'm living the reality of this is the way it is. And
Well, I'll tell
you
you, I don't know your father, but he does not blame you in any way. And you did the right thing that you thought was the right thing at that right time. And so that was the right course of action for you. And just like I had my September 2nd, 2014 come to Jesus moment, that's your
that
come
was
to
my
Jesus
come to
moment.
Jesus moment.
That's the moment where the aha moment where you're like, what am I doing? And that's what set you on the path to where you are today.
Yeah.
There's something that my pastor said many years ago that I'll never forget. And I don't know the exact statistic, like where he got it from, but he said that every single person who lives to life expectancy will experience 32, on average, 32 major life changes. Some good, some bad. Have a child, get married, great. Get a new job, graduate college, great. Lose a loved one, get a divorce, bad. You're
Yeah.
going to have the good and the bad, but that defines who you are, is how you respond in all of those peaks and valleys.
And yeah, you're 100% right. And I liked how you divided out, 12 hours for yourself, 30 hours for family, 30 hours for the other stuff you got to do. And don't forget your sleep. Uh, some of us sleep less than others, some of us sleep more than others. But, you know, if you divide that out and you live your life balanced and you're taking care of yourself, you have more left to give to other people. And don't, I find that when I'm not taking care of myself, and tell me if you find this is true, and maybe it's just me, but I find that when I'm taking care of myself and I'm really spending time learning to love myself and to appreciate my strengths and to acknowledge my limitations and to work on the ones I want to work on and to say the other ones are not important to me. When I take time to do that, I find I don't have resentment toward other people needing time. And then I want to spend time helping other people and I want to be with them and I have the energy and the love and desire to be with them. But when I'm not taking care of myself and somebody wants me to do yet another thing for them, it's and that's how it is. It's yet another thing instead of being oh gosh, yeah, I'd be happy to help out and do that. So I know we're getting a little deep, but I think that those
No,
are things that all of us need to consider, and it's that self love so that we can take care of other people.
and you're hitting the nail on the head, and I'm not, again, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, do this, do that. I struggle with it just like everybody else. I this spring I had a crazy abundance of things on my plate. At the very beginning of the podcast here, you remember I said that when I went on my retreat, every year I take the month of August off because I travel so much with business. My kids, just like you said, my kids are only going to be in my house for so many years before they go on. So when they're out of school and they're off in the month of August, I will not, I don't care how much money it's going to be. I am not working. I'm going to be with my kids and go somewhere, get out of our house. We go down to Florida, got a great place there. We stay right on the beach, and it's just us. But before that, I was burnt out. I was traveling in a different time zone every week, speaking at conferences, consulting with my clients, putting out fires, helping serving other people. I was serving at my own church where my pastor had not resigned, but he served his term and then accepted a call at another church. And so there's a vacancy. So I was serving at my church abundantly. I'm doing all these different things there and with my mom, and then the responsibilities of being a husband and a father and all these other things, plus running, an international marketing company, and all the other businesses that I have, right? I was burning out. And when I started to burn out, and this is I guess the fifth tip I'll throw out there for your podcast listeners, is get good at saying no. Get good at saying no, because right before I went on that vacation, the stress was getting to me so much that I take my blood pressure every single day. As a 43-year-old man, I'm very fit, I'm very healthy, and I want to, having taken care of the elderly as long as I have, I also learned that if I start early, I can prolong that as much as possible, right?
Right.
But my blood pressure started to elevate just a little bit, not nothing crazy, but just higher than it usually is. My blood pressure is usually in the perfect zone, and it was getting to elevated zone. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, "You're healthy as a horse." He's looking at me. He goes, "You see 43-year-olds come in here that look a lot older than you do. You don't look like you're 43, looking at you. What's going on in your personal life?" And I started telling him with everything that was happening. And he goes, "I prescribe a vacation for you." And I told him I have the big one coming up. He goes, "Just get to that vacation. But when you come back, I would dial back all of the responsibilities because you're no good to anybody if you're dead." And I was like, take your own advice, Steve. And I came back. And while I was on that trip, I actually went down and I looked at all the things I was doing and where can I step back and not have it impact things too much. And by making that change, it has already made a significant impact. My health has returned back to normal. My physical fitness has returned back to normal. My business is thriving. And there's always challenges. I was dealing with the challenge right before I jumped on with you. So I was shoveling food in my mouth when you first saw me. But I can handle it because I have that time to recharge, and I've taken things off my plate in a society and a culture where being busy is like a badge of honor. We need to take that away. And, hey, God rested on the seventh day. He said, take a Sabbath. That wasn't a suggestion. That was a commandment, right? Take that time for you. Get good at saying no.
When you say no, get good at that. I used to teach, and it's one of those things I need to put up on my wall. When you say no to one thing, you're saying yes to something else. So when you say no to that extra project, you're saying yes to your sanity. You're saying yes to your kids. You're saying yes to your health. You're saying yes to whatever it is you're saying yes to. And when you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So you're always saying yes and you're always saying no. You might as well say yes and no to the right things.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's exactly it. And that time, and again, the time with self and the time with family, because you brought up something that made me think of that Mark Twain quote where he basically says, like, I'm going to paraphrase, I can't remember it word for word, but he's like, 20 years from now, you're going to regret the things you didn't do more than the things you did. And then he's like, so set sail and blow the, I forget the rest of it, but that beginning part of it is so true. And, when I look back over I can't say the last 20 years, because a lot of stuff in the first 10 years of the last 20 were great decisions. That's how I met my wife. That's how, we had the children, I did own the business. That's my passion. So the first 10 years of this last 20 was great. But the last decade from that September 2nd, 2014, that's 10 years now. That decision and making the time for the right priorities, that's why I'm where I am today. No doubt in my mind. And the craziest thing is less time in my business, but more focused time because I wasn't depressed and everything. Mm-hmm. That's what makes the cup runneth over. That's where I have people who have businesses 4, 5, 10 times the size of mine that are working with me. And they're like, the reason why I work with you is not because of the business. It's because you help me be my best self I
Mm-hmm.
can manage the business when I'm on, but I'm
Yeah.
off and you help me stay on. That's like the greatest like fulfillment for me.
Now, I don't want to forget this. So I'm not saving it for last. So, how do people get in touch with you that do want to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, social media is probably the easiest way. You know, if you look up, you see my name right here. It says Steve the Hurricane. That is actually a registered trademark. It is a real thing. It's not a fake thing or whatever. Steve Weiss is my name, but Steve the Hurricane is my registered trademark. Let's see, I can't actually pull out my shirt's too tight over here, but I actually have my logo. It's actually tattooed right here
Oh, that's
on my arm. I've
awesome.
been Steve
Yeah,
the
look at
Hurricane now
that.
for almost 20 years now. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
who I am. But so if you look up Steve the Hurricane on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, there's only one. That's me. You'll see on Facebook and Instagram the little check mark to let you know that it's actually me, because there's always copycats out there and whatnot. And then you can find me on YouTube. I have thousands of videos on YouTube over the years on all things healthcare related. And then last, you can go to my website, homecareevolution.com. Homecareevolution.com. And you'll see some really cool stuff there. If you think about getting into the home care industry, I actually have a magazine, Home Care Evolution Quarterly. This is a free resource that people can access and get on there. And, all of that's all on my website as well. So social
And that's
media, website.
homecareevolution.com.
Correct.
Okay. Yep, there. Jace got that up there for us. He's awesome. I love my Jace.
He is.
my VA is the best. He's my executive assistant, and I just adore him. Thank you for getting that up there, Jace. I didn't want to. I'm not ending things. I just didn't want to leave this until the very end because
Mhm.
I didn't want to get pushing off and forgetting to do those things. Um, what are some of the? I mean, you've given us a lot of great tips, and honestly, you're a young man, and you
Don't
are a
feel
young
like it
man.
sometimes.
You're a young man for what you have accomplished. Okay, you are.
Thank you.
And you're my kids' age. Boy, that aged me, didn't it? You're my kids' age, and you've accomplished a lot of things, and so have they. But what advice would you give to anybody at any age for them to get where they want to be, to find their purpose in life, and to at the same time not have regrets at the end?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I'll break it into like two different phases. All right. So I'd
Okay.
say to my peers, people in their 40s and younger, right? People in their 40s and younger, I would say, uh, don't put it off. If it's important, if it's what you want to do, don't put it off. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, because there's never a perfect moment. My wife was the one, when I look at my marriage, and one of the best defining moments of my marriage, before the September 2nd, 2014 moment too, but I still would say this is one of the most defining moments, was in 2012 rather, when I started Hurricane Marketing Enterprises. And I was not fulfilled. I wanted to start a business. We had the nest egg from the sale of Care Choice, which was my home care company that I was a partner of. We had all these resources and stuff. And my wife looked at me and she goes, "Start your business. I trust you." And I was like, "What? We can't do this right now. Steven is 18 months going on 2 years old. And Sydney is 3, 4 months old. We got babies. It's not a good time." And she goes, "It's never going to be a good time. We'll figure it out. I trust you. Just start your business because you're not happy." And man, looking back, hindsight, that was the bet. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And that was the encouragement that I was able to do to push forward and do this as a 32-year-old, actually 31, a 31-year-old father of 2 babies, infants, husband. That was amazing. So my advice, don't wait for it to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be a reason why you can't. Instead, think of the reasons why you can and why you have
Right.
to, and move forward. Now, to the other half, the people over the age of 50 and above, right? I want you to remember that it doesn't matter if you're like, well, I'm, closer to the end of my life than I am to the birth, right? Don't worry about that. Colonel Sanders, Stephen Harvey, the list goes on and on of all these famous people, entrepreneurs who didn't start their businesses, who didn't get successful until they were in their 60s. Colonel Sanders was 65 when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken. What's stopping you? I was on the phone with one of my clients a little while ago who's 68 years old, and she's talking about selling her business. And she's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I'm kind of nervous, and, I'll always work or whatever. And I said, don't worry about that. It's going to come to you. You will figure out what to do. And I started telling her about what my clients who have sold their businesses, who are retirement age, what they did. And then and with the self-discovery, the new chapter, you just got to turn the page. So all you got to do is turn the page. Those empty nesters out there. Well, now my kids are all grown up, and what am I going to do? Whatever you want, right? Do it, though. Don't let age be a barrier. Don't let health be a barrier. Don't let anything be a barrier. Do it. There are countless stories, and I'll even go biblical over here, right? Everybody's heard of Moses. He was 80 years old when he said, let my people go. 80. All right. So, you can literally do anything. You just have to take that first step, young or old, just do it.
Well, and I had somebody give me advice a million years ago, because I am 1,000,005. And they said, I said, well, it'll take me 3 years to figure that out. This is too long. And they said, well, how long is 3 years? And then I said, well, 3 years. Well, how old will you be? I told them how old I'd be, and they say, oh, okay. So you'll be, how many years is it before you're how old? And I told them, and they said, so you can be that age anyway, regardless, because you're going to be that age, and you can be that age with this new skill, or you can be that age and not have that skill and still have the excuse that it takes too long. And it's like, you're going to leave a legacy anyway. Might as well be the legacy you want to leave.
And when I look back at that 31-year-old self and look at where I am today, if I could go back in time, I would say to 31-year-old self, you're going to be fine. Just do it. Just you got a good head on your shoulders. You'll figure it out. I'm not going to give you any tips or advice because I don't want to change. And I could possibly not have my third child, butterfly effect or whatever. But I would totally say you are going to be fine. And that's exactly it. Whereas if I had waited, I probably would have started the company now. And I would not be in the situation at all where I am today had I waited until my kids were, 10, 11, 10, 12, and 14. Those are their ages
and
now.
Think of the thousands of peoples whose lives you would not have been a savior for.
Millions.
Just
100%.
That would be bad.
Right.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, and oh gosh, we're gonna have to have you back on because you are just a spitfire. Yeah, you're the hurricane. And I just thank you so much for being on the show today. You've really inspired me, and I know you've inspired our audience. And the rest of you, thank you for being on with us as well. And remember, we have Power Surge every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then on Mondays, we have Karenisms. You'll like this, Dave. Karen always has something to say. We have Karenisms on Mondays, also at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. And we are now starting to have a webinar on various things. It will be the first and third Tuesday of each month, and you'll find out more about that throughout the week and next week, but the first and third Tuesday of the month. And we're going to be talking about things that you can do to live a first-class life and what first class means, because what Steve went over today is living a first-class life. It's not necessarily having a lot of money. It's what makes you happy. That's the first-class life. So all of that being said and done, be sure and join us again next week. And until we meet again, may you find peace and joy in all that you do. Mwah. Ciao for now.